Sunday, October 3rd, 2021, the 27th Sunday in Ordinary Time. The Gospel today narrates two incidents. First, a question on divorce, and second, Jesus reprimanding the disciples from preventing the children from coming to him. The first question is about legality. The Jewish lawyers came to ask a question on divorce, not to learn anything new, but to test the depth of knowledge of this master in the Jewish traditions. The debate was if it was legal to divorce. Given the respect that Jesus gave to women, the question must have arisen to trap Jesus in speaking against the law of Moses in defense of the women. According to the Mosaic law, a woman could be divorced. Hillel's school of Jewish law, which was prominent in the time of Jesus, held the interpretation that a woman could be divorced just for not cooking a good meal. In situations like this, the rabbis typically quoted the commentaries of other scholarly rabbis to establish their arguments. This also proved their erudition. When Jesus questions them on the Mosaic law, the lawyers insist that divorce practices are allowed by Moses, and they tried to force Jesus into saying either yes or no to divorce. Jesus skillfully gets out of the false dichotomy and invites their attention to the divine intentions of marriage. Jesus responds not by quoting other rabbis, but by quoting God. In Genesis, we learn that a marriage is indissoluble. Jesus also says it was not Moses who gave the permission to divorce, but even before Moses, human hearts had hardened as to already begin the practice which Moses then had to incorporate into the law. The lawyers were speaking of Mosaic law, but Jesus was speaking of divine law. Jesus does not deal with the intricacies of an unjust law, but rather with the true and pure intention of the divine. Jesus often reinterprets the laws according to the mind of God. Laws often do not incorporate the mind of God, but rather create a framework for defending minimum justice. Jesus appeals to the divine. In his Sermon on the Mount, he goes beyond the mere minimum justice. Looking at the law of divorce, we learn that if a man divorces a woman except for reasons of adultery and marries another woman, he commits adultery. If the woman divorces a man and marries another, she also commits adultery. The second phrase, which Matthew omits, seems unfair and unjust, deterring the woman from ever initiating a divorce. If we read this in the background of the Mosaic law, to kill a man and the woman who commit adultery, Jesus was naturally challenging the interpretation of the laws that gave convenient supremacy to men in this regard. Jesus was delegalizing, or annulling, many marriages that the Jews considered legal after the man had severed a divorce notice and remarried. Ultimately, what takes precedence? A proper discernment must be made to know if it is divine law or human law that is at work in any divorce case. According to the divine law, marriage is indissoluble. We are not ignoring the facts about the impossibility of living with partners with abusive behavior to the spouse or to the children. Living with an abusive partner will leave indelible psychological scars on the victim. In most abusive cases, pre-existing behavioral conditions that impede persons from giving informed consent at the time of marriage exist, although it may not be apparent at the time of the marriage. In such cases, the church annuls the marriage. No one should be forced to live in an abusive relationship. Divorce is the only source of protection. Compassion for anyone who is victimized in such a relationship should be the primary consideration in such divorce cases. The other incident, narrated in the Gospel, is that of the children trying to approach Jesus. The kids probably approached Jesus playfully, and the disciples prevented them from going to him. Jesus asks the disciples to let them meet him. Why did the disciples prevent them? They might have had several reasons. The children cannot speak rationally. They are not serious. They do not have important matters to discuss. So, childhood is a symbol of people who have difficulty to reason properly and to speak their minds sensibly. It is important to apply this to our own lives. What are the reasons we cite to keep people away from the church? And what reasons do we have to keep some people away? It is also good to check ourselves to see if we, at times, can become part of the category of people that we might prevent from coming into the church. There is a link between both instances. In the debate on divorce, the women are found wronged by the law. In the second instance, the children are wronged. What is important to note is that the issue begins with the go-betweens and the interlocutors. Men assuming to be the intermediaries between women and God, or the disciples assuming to be the middlemen between children or the weaker section of the people. This is where the crux of the problem lies, with the middlemen. What fuels the decision of Jesus on these occasions? Compassion. Compassion for the people who are wronged, who are controlled by the powerful. Jesus also cuts out the middlemen in both processes. In the first case, he interprets the divine law instead of the Mosaic law. In the second case, Jesus forgoes the mediation of the disciples. Even in his prayer, the Our Father, Jesus is asking all people to call God as their Father, bypassing the middlemen to the kingdom of God. That was revolutionary, and he had to pay with his life for displacing the middlemen of the temple tradition.